Stranger Things isn't just a story about kids on bikes and small-town mysteries. At its heart, it's about monsters. From the very first episode, when Will Byers vanished on his way home, the show revealed that Hawkins sits next to a world of predators, each one stranger and deadlier than the last. Level 1. Demobats. Demobats are flying predatory creatures which inhabit the Upside Down. These creatures first appeared when the party entered the Upside Down through Lover's Lake in Season 4. They're roughly the size of large bats, but with elongated tails ending in sharp points and mouths filled with rows of needle-like teeth. When Steve fell through the Watergate, he immediately encountered a swarm that attacked with coordinated precision. Demobats don't hunt individually, they operate as a collective intelligence. Eddie's sacrifice demonstrated their true tactical capabilities. When he played Master of Puppets on his trailer roof, the entire swarm responded instantly, abandoning their patrol routes to investigate the disturbance. Eddie knew he couldn't survive, but bought crucial time for Nancy, Steve, and Robin to reach the Creel House undetected. During the Creel House confrontation in Season 4, the true purpose of Demobats was revealed. As Nancy, Steve, and Robin pushed deeper into Vecna's lair, the Demobats acted like living shields, preventing anyone from reaching Vecna's vulnerable physical body while he was deep in his trance within the attic. Level 2. Demodogs. Demodogs are from the same species as the original Demogorgon, but in an adolescent form. The transformation cycle was documented through DART. Fully grown Demodogs stand waist-high to an adult human, with elongated skulls that split open to reveal rows of razor teeth. Unlike their adult Demogorgon form, Demodogs retain enough facial structure to show expressions, making their intelligence more apparent. The Hawkins Lab invasion showcased their pack hunting sophistication. Bob Newby's death resulted from walking directly into a corridor the pack had already secured. DART's recognition of Dustin revealed that Demodogs retain memories across their metamorphosis. When confronted in the school tunnel, DART allowed Dustin to pass unharmed, proving these creatures can form individual bonds despite their hive mind connection. One of the most striking demonstrations of Demodog ferocity came in the junkyard battle of Season 2. Surrounded and heavily outnumbered, Steve Harrington armed himself with nothing but a spiked bat and sheer determination to buy the kids time. The Demodogs attacked with coordinated precision, yet despite their monstrous speed and strength, Steve proved they were not invincible. This moment confirmed that while Demodogs were terrifying hunters, they could be resisted through human resilience and strategy, a critical insight in a fight that otherwise seemed hopeless. Level 3. Demogorgon. Demogorgons are predatory creatures that inhabited the Upside Down, assumed to obey the Mind Flayer and Vecna, making up part of the Upside Down's hive mind. The original Demogorgon stands 7 feet tall with a humanoid silhouette that becomes horrifically alien when its face opens like a blooming flower to reveal rings of teeth. The Demogorgon possesses superhuman strength and can break through solid walls, easily overpowering and carrying a fully grown man. Its elongated limbs end in claws capable of tearing through steel, and its entire body seems designed for maximum intimidation. The 1983 Hawkins invasion began when Eleven accidentally opened the gate during her psychic spying mission. The Demogorgon immediately began hunting specific targets. It tracked Will Byers across town, eventually capturing him alive at his family shed. Barb Holland was killed at Steve's pool party the same night, but her death was immediate. It can stalk prey from the Upside Down where it remains invisible and intangible, then manifest physically at the moment of attack. Nancy's encounter at Steve's house showed this ability when the creature emerged from the living room wall with no warning. Season 4 revealed multiple Demogorgons operating in different regions of the Upside Down. The original Demogorgon's end in Season 1 was as spectacular as its reign of terror. At Hawkins Middle School, Eleven faced the creature head-on. She unleashed a psychic blast so powerful that it didn't just wound the creature, it obliterated it, leaving nothing behind. No body, no remains, just a burst of energy that annihilated the beast on the spot. Years later, in the Russian prison of Season 4, Hopper confronted another Demogorgon under vastly different circumstances. When exposed to fire, the Demogorgon faltered, screeching in pain as flames engulfed its body. The Soviets had conditioned it to respond to feeding schedules and containment protocols, demonstrating that Demogorgons retain enough intelligence to be trained. Level 4. Mind Flayer Shadow Form. The Mind Flayer was named after the Dungeons & Dragons character due to their similarities, and like its tabletop inspiration, this entity operates as a collective intelligence that can dominate and control other minds. The shadow form exists as a massive storm cloud of living particles, each one capable of independent action, while remaining connected to the central consciousness. Will's first encounters with the shadow form during his episodes in Season 2 showed a creature the size of a skyscraper. The possession process began gradually, with Will experiencing now memories, where he would slip into the Upside Down and witness the Mind Flayer's approach toward Hawkins. The entity used this knowledge to manipulate Joyce, Jonathan, and Mike by making Will act cold and distant. The Mind Flayer operates like a hive mind where all creatures share consciousness. This means every Demobat, Demodog, and Demogorgon feeds sensory information back to the central intelligence. When you encounter any upside-down creature, you're being observed by the collective awareness of the entire ecosystem. In Season 2, the party discovered that the Mind Flayer's influence was not confined to the sky. It spread beneath Hawkins through an elaborate network of tunnels filled with upside-down growth. Season 4 revealed the shadow particles' true nature when Vecna used them to manifest the Mind Flayer's form. Will's drawings from Season 2, which captured the towering spider-shaped silhouette. Level 5. Mind Flayer Meat Form. The meat form represents the Mind Flayer's evolution from interdimensional entity to physical predator capable of operating independently in our reality. This creature was constructed from dozens of human and animal victims, fused together into a 20-foot-tall organism that defied every law of biology. Billy Hargrove's possession at the community pool began the construction phase. The Mind Flayer was using him as a collection agent, identifying and gathering victims for the meat form's construction. The fully formed meat form consisted of recognizable human and animal parts grotesquely fused together. During the Starcourt Mall battle, the meat form demonstrated problem-solving abilities that combined human strategic thinking with supernatural physical power. Its behavior confirmed that the meat form was as much a weapon of manipulation as it was of raw destruction. The meat form specifically targeted Max during the final confrontation, using Billy's voice and memories to inflict maximum emotional trauma. Billy was able to briefly override the Mind Flayer's control. This suggests that every consumed victim retains some form of individual awareness, making the meat form essentially a prison for dozens of tortured souls. Level 6. Vecna. Henry Creel was born between 1945 and 1950. Henry's childhood in the Creel house showed early signs of his developing psychic abilities and sadistic tendencies. He tortured animals using telekinesis and eventually murdered his mother and sister by snapping their bones and removing their eyes. Henry was taken by Dr. Brenner to become test subject 001 at Hawkins Lab. Henry immediately massacred every other test subject, demonstrating both his ruthlessness and his strategic thinking about eliminating future threats. Eleven's confrontation with Henry created the first major rift to the Upside Down when she banished him there in 1979. But instead of imprisoning him, this exile gave Henry an entire dimension to reshape according to his vision. His killing method involves trapping victims in personalized psychological nightmares based on their deepest traumas. Chrissy Cunningham faced her fears about her mother's criticism and eating disorder. Fred Benson relived his guilt over the car accident that killed someone. Patrick McKinney confronted his father's abuse. Nancy's vision in Vecna's mindscape revealed his ultimate plan, merging Hawkins with the Upside Down to create a reality where psychological torture could be sustained indefinitely. Henry created the Mind Flayer from upside-down particles, which means he's not just controlling it, he's its architect and primary programmer. All creatures make up part of the Upside Down's hive mind under Vecna's ultimate control. Demobats provide reconnaissance and overwhelming force through coordinated swarms. Demodogs serve as ground troops with pack intelligence and memory retention across their development cycle. Demogorgons function as regional commanders with interdimensional mobility and selective predation capabilities. The Mind Flayer's shadow form coordinates the entire network while gathering psychological intelligence through possession. Its meat form provides devastating physical power while serving as a proof of concept for dimensional invasion. And Vecna orchestrates everything from his position as the architect who created this ecosystem of terror. Now that we understand the hierarchy of the Upside Down, let's look at the children who were shaped by Hawkins Lab long before the story began. The first experiments at Hawkins began in the late 1950s under the CIA. A small group of subjects, including Subject 001, later known as Henry Creel, were guinea pigs for techniques that would later define the entire program. Most didn't survive the process. Those who did were broken beyond repair. The breakthrough came with Subject 001, a child who had already demonstrated psychic abilities before coming to the lab. Henry was a proof of concept for Brenner. Unlike the others, Henry's powers weren't created by the experiments, they were amplified by them. Through years of careful manipulation disguised as fatherly care, but Henry was too intelligent, too aware of what was being done to him. In September 1959, he orchestrated a massacre at the lab, using his telekinetic powers to kill every other test subject and most of the staff. It taught Brenner a crucial lesson: power without absolute control was useless. Terry Ives was among the first wave of these subjects. She volunteered for what she thought were harmless sensory experiments. The researchers told her they were testing new forms of of meditation and consciousness expansion. What they were actually doing was systematically altering her brain chemistry with the hope of inducing psychic abilities in her future offspring. After her involvement in the program ended, Terry became pregnant and gave birth to her daughter in a hospital in 1971. The baby, named Jane, was stolen from her and taken to the lab. Terry's mind was then systematically destroyed through electroshock therapy. To silence her, they simply fractured her mind, leaving her in a fugue state obsessed with finding her daughter. The baby became Subject 011. The numbers program represented Brenner's vision, refined through a decade of trial and error. Subject 002 was one of the earliest post-Henry children to show promise in telekinetic ability. Records indicate he was stronger than most of the early numbers and frequently ranked highest in controlled dueling sessions. In the Rainbow Room, 002 became a sort of unofficial leader, often enforcing a harsh pecking order among the others. During a classified enhancement session involving electromagnetic stimulation, 002 suffered an aneurysm brought on by neurological overload. Subject 003 displayed an unusual sensitivity to electromagnetic fields from an early age. Subject 004 was able to levitate small objects, but couldn't sustain focus. Subject 005 demonstrated heat sensitivity and mood-triggered electrical discharges, but lacked control. Subject 006 showed early signs of mind reading or suggestion, though inconsistent. Subject 007 could mimic psychic movements of others. Their behavioral issues were more problematic than their psychic underperformance. These children frequently lashed out during training. Subject 008, Callie, survived the conditioning process and developed the ability to manipulate perception itself. She could create elaborate illusions, making people see things that weren't there or hiding things that were. By the late 1970s, Callie had become too dangerous to contain reliably. She escaped during a routine transfer, leaving behind several guards who insisted they had been attacked by monsters that security cameras showed didn't exist. Subject 009 was brought into the program at age 5. 009 consistently failed to perform during trials. 009 never developed measurable psychic abilities. Subject 010 was the last known subject before 11 to display unique abilities, and her power was among the most technically interesting. She could interface mentally with electronic systems, not just manipulating lights and buzzers, but actively rerouting data streams and corrupting surveillance feeds. This made her one of the few children whose ability had strategic military value. 010 was always watching, silent, calculating. Subject 011 was different. Jane, she could move objects with her thoughts and make psychic contact with living beings across vast distances. More importantly, her conditioning had been perfect. She viewed Brenner as her father and the lab as her home. The sensory deprivation tank experiments began in 1979. 11 could project her consciousness anywhere in the world, becoming the perfect spy. 11 was used to gather intelligence on terrorist groups, track down missing persons, and even influence the outcome of political negotiations. The most significant mission came in November 1983. Brenner ordered 11 to make contact with what they believed was a Russian psychic operative operating from an unknown location. What she found instead changed everything. The creature had no name in any human language, a predator from another dimension entirely. The psychic contact created a tear in reality itself. The Mind Flayer, the hive mind that controlled the Upside Down, had been waiting for exactly this kind of opening. The portal that opened in Hawkins Lab, allowing the atmosphere and influence of the Upside Down to bleed into our reality. Brenner was fascinated rather than terrified. The final generation of numbered children at Hawkins Lab, subjects 012 through 018, were part of the youngest and most recent wave before the program's catastrophic collapse. Each had their own developing abilities, though none had reached the level of psychic maturity seen in 11 or even Callie. Subject 012 was one of the more outgoing children in the Rainbow Room. While his full ability remains unclear, files imply he was being evaluated for remote viewing potential. Subject 013 displayed temperamental issues. Subject 014 was quiet, introverted, and showed signs of heightened sensory awareness. Researchers were in the process of exploring whether the sensitivity could be shaped into psychic threat detection or tracking. Subject 015, one of the smaller boys in the program, was reported to have difficulty keeping up with performance benchmarks. His ability, if any, was likely minor. Subjects 016 and 017 were identical twins, a rare case that intrigued Dr. Brenner. Subject 018, the youngest in the cohort, was still in the observation stage. Though many of these children never advanced past baseline assessments, their presence speaks to how far the lab had expanded the program in secret, and each trusted Papa Dr. Brenner to protect them. That trust was shattered on September 8, 1979, when Henry Creel unleashed the full extent of his power. The Rainbow Room, meant to be their sanctuary, became a slaughterhouse. One by one, the children fell, lifted into the air, crushed, broken. In the end, only 11 survived, and the lives of 12 through 18 were erased, not just from history, but from memory. The massacre marked the end of the numbers program. Only 11 survived, but survival came at a cost. While the lab tried to recover from its own disaster, something far worse had already begun to awaken. The first disappearances began almost immediately. Will Byers was taken while cycling home from a friend's house, pulled into the Upside Down. Will became the first human subject in the Mind Flayer's research into our species' biology and psychology. Barbara Holland was taken the same night from the Wheelers' swimming pool. Her death was swifter than Will's captivity, but equally important to the Mind Flayer's research. Joyce Byers experienced electromagnetic anomalies in her home as the boundary between dimensions weakened. Nancy Wheeler briefly entered the Upside Down itself, giving the Mind Flayer its first close observation of human courage and determination. But the most significant development was Eleven's escape from the laboratory. The psychic backlash from creating the portal had left her disoriented and terrified. For the first time in her life, she was outside the lab's controlled environment, experiencing the world she had only observed through remote viewing. The portal at Hawkins Lab had been closed through Hopper and Joyce's intervention, but not before the entity had established dozens of smaller connection points throughout the town. The experiments at Hawkins National Laboratory had begun with the simple goal of creating psychic weapons for the Cold War. They had ended by opening humanity to an entity that viewed all of reality as raw material for its own expansion. And the war was far from over. The Mind Flayer had learned humanity's greatest weakness, that the connections which made us strong could also be turned against us. Love could become possession, trust could become manipulation, and hope could become the bait that led us willingly into darkness. The entity no longer needed to break down the barriers between worlds. It simply had to convince us to tear them down ourselves. To understand their origins, we need to break down the abilities the lab awakened, and how each power works in this world. From Eleven's telekinesis to Vecna's terrifying grip on his victims, Stranger Things introduced us to incredible abilities born from secret experiments and the darkness of the Upside Down. Some saved lives, others destroyed them. These powers shaped the story at every turn, making Hawkins more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. But what exactly were these abilities? Telekinesis. The most prominent power in the show belongs to Eleven, and it's telekinesis. Throughout all the seasons, we've seen Elle move objects with her mind, from small toys to entire vehicles. We've seen her flip vans, close dimensional gates, and even pull a helicopter from the sky. In Season 4's flashbacks, she unleashed a surge of telekinetic force so powerful that it not only defeated Henry, but also banished him into the Upside Down, transforming him into Vecna. Whenever Elle uses her abilities extensively, she experiences nosebleeds and extreme exhaustion. Remote viewing. Another aspect of Eleven's abilities is remote viewing, which she demonstrated frequently at Hawkins Lab. By entering a sensory deprivation tank or using a blindfold and white noise, she can see and hear everything happening in these remote locations, as if she's actually there. We saw her use this to spy on Russian communications. The first time Eleven used her remote viewing ability at Hawkins Lab, she made psychic contact with the Demogorgon. That single moment opened the second gate in 1983 and started Hawkins' nightmare. The catch is that she's completely vulnerable while doing this. Her body remains in one place while her mind travels elsewhere, meaning someone could easily harm her physical form while she's projecting. This ability requires complete concentration, making it nearly impossible to use in combat situations. Psychic connection. Perhaps the most dangerous aspect of Eleven's powers is her ability to create psychic links with other beings. When she first touched the Demogorgon in the void, this showed us that her powers can bridge dimensions and create connections that shouldn't exist. This connection works both ways. When she's linked to something, it can also sense her and potentially track her location. The Mind Flayer used this connection to spy on the group's plans and always stay one step ahead. Mind reading and memory exploration. One of Elle's lesser-shown but incredibly powerful abilities is accessing other people's minds. We saw her do this with Billy in Season 3, uncovering his traumatic childhood and the Mind Flayer's control over him. She can also extract information from people's minds, though this seems to cause her more strain than her other abilities. This ability became the foundation culmination of the Nina project in Season 4. Brenner and Owens placed Elle in a sensory deprivation system to force her to relive her childhood memories. She was able to rediscover the truth about the massacre. Dimensional manipulation. By far the most consequential of Elle's powers is her ability to affect the barrier between dimensions. She can open and close gates to the upside down, though this requires enormous amounts of energy. We saw her close the main gate at the end of Season 2, which nearly killed her from the exertion. Opening gates seems to happen accidentally when she's frightened or using her powers in extreme circumstances. What makes this ability so dangerous is that Elle doesn't have complete control over it. The Mind Flayer's possession. While not exactly a power someone would want, the Mind Flayer's ability to possess and control people is terrifying. We first saw this with Will in Season 2 when the Mind Flayer used him as a spy. The possession gave the Mind Flayer access to all of Will's memories, thoughts, and everything he saw and heard. Later, in Season 3, we saw the Mind Flayer take this ability even further by possessing multiple people at once, creating the Flayed. The Mind Flayer could even liquefy their bodies and merge them together into larger, more powerful forms. Vecna's curse. Vecna can psychically invade people's minds from a distance, trapping them in nightmarish visions built from their trauma and guilt. While they're trapped, their bodies remain in the real world. Vecna uses these visions to torture his victims before ultimately killing them by breaking their bones and crushing their bodies from the inside out. What makes this power truly terrifying is that Vecna specifically targets people suffering from trauma, depression, and guilt. Every victim of Vecna's curse experienced the same warning signs before their death: the vision of a grandfather clock and hallucinations tied to their deepest trauma. True sight. One unique ability that will develop after his time in the Upside Down is what we might call true sight. He can sense when the Mind Flayer is near and feel its presence even across dimensions. This ability makes Will incredibly valuable as an early warning system, but it also puts him in constant danger. The connection to the Upside Down never fully went away, meaning Will remains vulnerable to its influence. We saw at the end of Season 4 that he can still sense when Vecna is active. He felt sudden chills and visions whenever the Mind Flayer was near, creating illusions. Callie, also known as 8, demonstrated a completely different type of power from 11. While Elle's abilities were physical and dimensional, Callie's were purely mental. She could create realistic illusions that affect multiple people at once. We saw her make an entire group of people see things that weren't there, from monsters to collapsed bridges. The limitation of Callie's power is that it only works on perception. If someone knows they're looking at an illusion and focuses hard enough, they can see through it. We saw Elle do this when Callie tried to make her see a false version of Brenner. Despite this limitation, Callie's powers are incredibly useful for escape and psychological warfare. Shared consciousness. The hive mind ability displayed by the creatures of the Upside Down is fascinating and terrifying. The Demogorgons, Demodogs, and all other creatures from that dimension share a collective consciousness controlled by the Mind Flayer. When one creature sees something, they all know about it instantly. When one is hurt, they all react. This makes them incredibly coordinated and nearly impossible to outsmart. What's truly scary about this hive mind is that it can extend to humans who are possessed or flayed. In Season 2, when soldiers set fire to the tunnels under Hawkins, Will screamed in pain even though he wasn't physically touched. This moment confirmed that the vines, the tunnels, and the creatures were all part of the same hive mind. Superhuman abilities. While trapped in the Russian prison, Hopper encountered a Demogorgon that displayed incredible physical abilities. These creatures possess superhuman strength, able to tear through solid walls and overpower multiple armed soldiers. They also have enhanced durability, surviving gunshots and explosions that would kill a human instantly. Perhaps their most disturbing ability is their petal-like face that opens up to reveal rows of teeth. It enhances their already powerful sense of smell. They also don't seem to feel pain the way humans do. The only reliable way to kill a Demogorgon is with fire or by completely destroying its body. Regeneration and adaptation. The Mind Flayer itself demonstrated an incredible ability to adapt and regenerate. We saw this when the Mind Flayer created its massive spider-like body from the melted remains of the Flayed in Season 3. It could grow, shrink, split apart, and reform itself as needed. Even when Elle ripped it apart with her powers, the pieces would try to reconnect. The power of music. Finally, while not a supernatural ability, we learned that music has an unexplainable power in Stranger Things that can break through Vecna's curse. When Max was trapped in Vecna's mind palace, Kate Bush's running up that hill created a lifeline that allowed her to escape. This suggests that emotional connections and memories associated with music can pierce through psychic attacks. The science behind this isn't fully explained, but it seems that music activates different parts of the brain than Vecna's curse targets. The possibility of other lab powers. So far, we've seen 11 Eleven's telekinesis, Callie's illusions, and hints that other subjects may have had abilities too. Perhaps even powers we've never seen. Brenner's obsession wasn't just with creating one weapon. It was about creating many. Season 5 could easily reveal that Vecna wasn't the only one with devastating abilities. The big question is whether those powers will resurface through hidden survivors, or if 11 herself will manifest new abilities as she pushes beyond her limits. So those are all the major powers we've seen throughout Stranger Things across all the season. And no one represents these powers more than 11. Here's how her abilities evolved throughout the series. From crushing soda cans with her mind to tearing open the fabric between dimensions, 11's powers have always been at the heart of Stranger Things. In this video, we're looking at every time 11 used her powers in Stranger Things, beginning with the very first season where the legend of Elle began. Season 1. Benny's Burgers. 11 sits alone at a table in Benny's Burgers, quietly eating the food he gave her. Benny stands at the counter behind her, talking on the phone with social services. As he speaks, a metal oscillating fan nearby rattles loudly. 11 turns her head and looks at it. No words, no movement, and the fan stops. The noise cuts out instantly. It's her first on-screen use of power, the can. In a white observation room inside Hawkins Lab, Dr. Brenner and his team stand behind glass, watching. 11 sits on the opposite side, silent, her eyes locked on the metal soda can placed in front of her. The can crushes in on itself, imploding under invisible pressure. The door slams. Later, when Dustin and Lucas argue about telling Mike's parents, 11 slams the door shut with her mind to keep them inside. The sound echoes through the Wheeler house, and the boys can't believe what just happened. The school bullies. One of the most iconic moments in Season 1 comes when Mike is tormented by bullies who force him to jump off a cliff. As Mike leaps, 11 appears, catching him mid-fall and pulling him back to safety with her powers. Then she turns her rage on the bullies. With nothing but a glance, she snaps one boy's arm in front of everyone. 11 isn't just a scared child anymore. She's the weapon Brenner created, the supermarket theft. Hungry and alone, 11 wanders into a grocery store. She grabs Eggo waffles and, when confronted by a cashier, simply smashes the sliding glass doors open with her mind and walks away. The van. Mike, Dustin, and Lucas race down the road on their bikes, 11 riding with Mike. Behind them, a Hawkins Lab van speeds forward, closing the distance fast. They cut through back roads and alleys, but the van gains on them. With nowhere left to run, the boys brace for impact. 11 turns. The van lifts off the ground and flips over them mid-air, crashing hard in the street behind. Finding Will in the void. With the boys' makeshift sensory deprivation tank at the middle school, 11 slips into the black, watery void of her mind. For the first time, we see her psychic abilities used to reach across dimensions. She finds Will Byers, hiding in Castle Byers in the Upside Down. Her powers aren't just about destruction, they're also about connection. The hallway. As the agents storm the school hallway, the kids have nowhere left to run, and 11 steps forward without hesitation. Her nose is already bleeding. In seconds, the hallway is still. The agents lie motionless on the floor. The monster at the school. In the Season 1 finale, 11's powers are tested like never before. When the Demogorgon storms the school, she steps forward, nose bleeding, body shaking, and unleashes everything she has. With one final push, she slams the monster against the wall, trapping it. And then, in a moment both heroic and tragic, 11 sacrifices herself, obliterating the Demogorgon and vanishing with it into the Upside Down. Every use of 11's powers in Season 1 was tied to survival. Season 2. The cabin. Season 2 begins with 11 living in secret with Hopper in the woods. She's isolated, angry, and desperate to see her friends, but Hopper keeps her locked inside for her safety. It's here we see her powers in small, intimate ways, slamming doors in frustration, rattling windows when she screams, channel surfing. Lonely and longing for connection, 11 tries to reach Mike through static on the television. She pushes her mind out through the void. On the other side, we see Mike in his basement, calling out to her every night on his walkie-talkie. For a split second, it's one of the season's most heartbreaking moments. The radio file. 11 sneaks into Hopper's shed, digging through dusty boxes until she pulls out one labeled Hawkins Lab. Inside, she finds a folder with a photo of Terry Ives and the name Jane. She shuts the box and grabs the radio. Terry Ives, her mother, appears in her mind for a moment. Reunion with Terry Ives. When 11 runs away to find her mother, Terry Ives is trapped in a permanent catatonic state, endlessly repeating the same three words: breathe, sunflower, rainbow. 11 takes her mother's hand, closes her eyes, and enters her memories. We see the story unfold. Terry trying to save her baby from Brenner, being dragged away, shocked with electrodes until her mind broke. 11 doesn't just read memories, she relives them. Callie and the Illusions. Season 2 also introduces Callie, or 8, another child from Hawkins Lab with powers of her own. When 11 finds her, she learns she isn't alone. There are others like her. Callie teaches her to channel her anger, to use her trauma as fuel. In a warehouse, 11 lifts a massive train car with her mind, straining until her nose bleeds, her body shaking. 11 realizing her powers aren't just for hiding or surviving. They can be weaponized on a new scale. Closing the gate. The climax of Season 2 is the most important display of her powers yet. Hopper covers her as 11 steps forward, trembling but determined. The gate is massive, pulsing with energy. She screams as she levitates, arms outstretched, blood pouring from her nose. The gate shrinks, screaming with a voice of its own, until at last it seals shut. Season 2 showed us the cost. Every time she used them, she pushed herself closer to exhaustion. Season 3. The Cabin Summer. By Season 3, 11's life looks almost normal. She has a boyfriend in Mike, a best friend in Max, and a home with Hopper. Her powers are part of her daily life. She uses them casually, slamming doors on Hopper during arguments, blasting the TV when Mike won't answer questions. The toy. When Dustin returns from science camp, he finds his room empty, but something's off. His toys begin to move on their own. The cymbal-banging monkey claps. A robot whirs to life. He watches, confused. One after another. It's 11. Hidden with the others, she's using her powers to lead him in for a surprise. Spying on Billy. 11's powers take a darker turn. At Max's suggestion, she focuses on Billy, suspecting he's hiding something. In the black watery space, she sees him in the locker room. It's the first clue that Billy is possessed, and it sets 11 on a path of discovery. Heather's parents. When 11 and Max confront Billy and Heather, things escalate quickly. Heather's parents are drugged, the sauna is boiling, and Billy is ready to attack. 11 steps in, flinging Billy across the room with her mind. But the possession makes Billy stronger than ever. The sauna test. In one of the most iconic sequences of the season, the group traps Billy in the Hawkins pool sauna to test if he's under the Mind Flayer's control. As the heat rises, Billy thrashes against the door, screaming, begging, and then finally breaking free. 11 unleashes her full force. She hurls Billy through the brick wall, slamming him outside into the pavement. The cabin siege. The Mind Flayer doesn't wait long to retaliate. The monster sends a massive creature made of fused human and animal bodies, a grotesque meat puppet built from Hawkins citizens. It crashes through the walls, tearing the cabin apart. 11 throws everything she has at it, ripping parts of its body off, hurling them aside, and slamming the monster back again and again. Finally, she drives it away. The van flip. Around the Starcourt Mall parking lot, Dustin, Steve, Robin, and Erica are cornered by Russian guards in a van. 11, wounded and pushed to her limit, she lifts the van off the ground. It tilts, flips, 11's body trembles, but the action gives them a chance to escape. The mall battle. The season builds to the climactic showdown at Starcourt Mall. The Mind Flayer's massive creature looms outside, smashing into the building. 11 and her friends sprint through Starcourt. Lucas hurls fireworks, cracks of light, splinters of sound, to draw its attention away. She fights with words, a memory, a mother, a shared past. Billy falters. Joyce, Hopper, and the group reach the key. With hope in their hearts, they pull the switch. The gate closes. 11 breathes, broken but standing. Hawkins is safe for now. Season 1 made 11 a weapon. Season 2 made her a savior. But Season 3 broke her. Season 4. California life. Her powers are gone. At school, she's bullied relentlessly, mocked, and humiliated in front of Mike during a roller skating disaster. She snaps, smashing Angelo in the face with a roller skate. But it's not with her powers, it's with her own hands. For the first time, we see just how vulnerable she is without the abilities that once defined her. The Nina Project. When Dr. Owens and Dr. Brenner bring her to the underground facility, she's forced to relive her trauma in the Nina tank. Her powers slowly return. We see her training again. Each success comes at the cost of emotional scars being reopened. To reclaim her powers, she has to relive everything that broke her. Papa's death. In the desert, as Brenner tries to drag her away from danger, soldiers open fire. Brenner is hit and collapses in the sand, bleeding. 11 stands over him, helicopters circling. For a moment, she considers leaving him, the man who caused her so much pain. But instead, she shields herself, the helicopters spinning wildly. Even as she rejects Brenner's control, she proves she's stronger than he ever imagined. The Nevada rescue. Meanwhile in Hawkins, Vecna has claimed his victims and set his sights on Max. 11 uses Nina's tank to enter the void. Inside Max's mind, she finds herself in Hawkins High's snowball dance. She fights Vecna face to face, but Vecna is stronger than anything she's faced before. Max's death and revival. In one of the most heartbreaking scenes of the series, Vecna succeeds. Max levitates, her limbs snap, and she collapses in Lucas's arms. Her heart stops, and she dies for over a minute, but 11 refuses to let go. She presses her hand to Max's chest and pushes with everything she has, restarting her heart. Max lives, but barely, left blind, broken, and comatose. 11 saved her body, but not her mind. Season 4 showed us the true scale of 11's powers and their limits, ripped helicopters from the sky, fought Vecna in his own domain, and even dragged Max back from death. But for all her victories, she couldn't win it all. Hawkins still fell. Vecna still survived. But every hero has an opposing force, and in Stranger Things, that force was created long before 11 ever escaped Vecna. The story of Vecna doesn't begin in the Upside Down. It begins with a boy. A quiet house in Hawkins, 1959. The Creel family had just moved in, but something about the boy, Henry, was always off. He didn't cry as a baby. He didn't laugh either. He watched clocks. He dissected animals. While his father Victor tried to keep the family together, Henry saw the world differently. Life was meaningless. People were pests. And behind his silence, something was growing. A power he didn't understand. His mother tried to fix him, prayed for him, but he hated her for it. Hated her weakness. He found an injured rabbit in the garden. Instead of helping it, he made it suffer. That was the beginning. Over time, Henry realized he could influence things. Lights flickered. Clocks stopped. Then came the night he reached into his father's mind. It was curiosity. He twisted Victor's memories, showed him horrors, made him doubt his sanity. Victor went mad. But the worst was yet to come. When his mother tried to send him away, Henry snapped. His mother rose into the air. Bones snapped like twigs. His sister followed. He nearly died. When the authorities came, only Victor survived. They locked him in Penhust. Dr. Martin Brenner found him. Not a boy, but a weapon. Henry was taken to Hawkins Lab, reborn as Subject 001. But inside, Henry was watching. Years passed. The lab changed. The children grew. But Henry stayed in the shadows. Henry became a janitor, an orderly, someone the kids could trust. He called himself Peter. No one knew what he was. Then came 11. She was different. He watched her, taught her tricks, told her the lab was a prison. She listened. And when the time came, she helped him. That was all he needed. The massacre was swift. Blood on walls. Children crushed. Brenner wounded but alive. And in the center of it all stood Henry. He offered her a choice. Join him. But 11 refused. She fought. She didn't kill him. She banished him. The walls of the lab cracked open. He vanished into the void and landed somewhere else. The Upside Down. His skin burned. And the mind of a boy became the mind of a god. He wandered the dark plains. Found the Mind Flayer. Not a creature, but a force. Shape without shape. Henry gave it form. Gave it a mind. And Henry took a new name. Vecna. He would return. Not as a soldier, but as the general of the storm. The clock began ticking again. When Will Byers stumbled into the Upside Down in 1983, Vecna didn't strike immediately. He sensed the chaos caused by 11, felt the gate rip open again at Hawkins Lab, and began to understand just how connected the two worlds were. In 1984, the Mind Flayer tried to take over Will Byers. It used tunnels and toxins, tendrils and storms, and nearly succeeded. But 11 closed the gate again, driving the creature back. Still, Vecna learned. He watched how the humans fought, how they loved, how they hurt. He pieced together his return. And when a new gate opened in 1985 under Starcourt Mall, Vecna came closer to reawakening. When 11 lost her powers, Vecna felt the shift. She had been the only true threat, and now she was powerless. The real war could begin. He shaped the Mind Flayer from the swirling particles of the dimension, giving it the spider-like form he had once drawn as a child. It was no longer just a creature. It was a weapon. By the time Season 4 begins, Vecna is no longer hiding. He begins attacking teenagers in Hawkins. Chrissy Cunningham, a cheerleader with a broken home and an eating disorder. Fred Benson, a student plagued by guilt over a car crash. Patrick McKinney, a basketball player trying to bury a violent past. Each of them saw visions. The grandfather clock, the ticking, the vines, and finally, the floating and the snap. Every death cracked open the barrier between worlds a little more. Vecna's powers weren't just physical. He used trauma as a weapon. And as Nancy Wheeler discovered, he was Henry Creel, the boy who killed his family, the boy who became #1. The truth was undeniable now. He was the one behind the Mind Flayer. He was the one who turned Billy into a weapon. He was the one who opened the wounds in Hawkins. The group in Hawkins began to fight back. Max Mayfield, still grieving Billy, realized she was next. But with Kate Bush playing in her ears, she escaped him. That escape revealed a weakness. Music, emotion, memory. Things Vecna didn't understand. Vecna wasn't done. He attacked again. Nancy saw visions of the future. Hawkins, broken. The sky on fire. The earth split open. And So, as the season reaches its climax, Vecna moves in for the kill. Max offers herself as bait, Lucas stands beside her, and the others prepare for war. In the Upside Down, Eddie and Dustin defend their post. Robin, Steve, and Nancy hunt Vecna's physical form. And Eleven, in the Void, enters Max's mind to confront the creature who started it all. He lifts Max, breaks her bones. And in the final moments, it takes everything Eleven has to bring Max back. But it's too late. The fourth gate opens, the town cracks, and Vecna escapes. He isn't gone. He's injured, burned, shot, but not dead. And in the ash that falls over Hawkins, his shadow still moves. And it isn't over. While the town of Hawkins tried to rebuild with food banks and disaster tents, the kids who had saved the world before walked through the ruins knowing they had failed. They had closed the gate once. But this time, they hadn't stopped anything. Because Vecna hadn't just brought horror. He brought doubt. The war coming in Season 5 won't be a chase through forests or a fistfight in a cabin. It'll be psychic warfare. The heroes don't just have to fight the monsters around them. They'll have to fight the ones inside them. Because Vecna is no longer just a villain hiding in the Upside Down. He's part of the world now. He's reshaping reality to match his vision. So when Will grabs the back of his neck in the final scene and whispers, "He's not gone," we know he's right. Vecna isn't just alive. He's winning. And unless the next fight is smarter, harder, and more united than anything they've ever faced, the world as they know it will end not with a scream, but with a whisper in Vecna's voice. His rise is terrifying, but the impact is even darker. These are the lives claimed by Vecna. From the twisted bones of a cheerleader to the shattered mind of a girl who couldn't escape her past, Vecna didn't just kill his victims in Stranger Things Season 4, he dismantled them from the inside out. Over the course of one brutal season, Henry Creel orchestrated a killing spree that claimed dozens of lives, whether by his own psychic powers or as a consequence of the gates he tore open. In this video, we're going to cover every single person he killed. Vecna's first kill was Chrissy Cunningham, a seemingly perfect cheerleader caught in Vecna's web of psychological torture. Chrissy had been struggling with her mother's relentless criticism and her own crushing self-doubt, but when Vecna found her, he didn't need to create new fears. He simply amplified the ones that were already eating her alive. For weeks, he'd been feeding on her insecurities, growing stronger every time she looked in a mirror and hated what she saw. The visions started small. The walls of her bedroom seemed to breathe around her. When Chrissy walked into Eddie Munson's trailer that night, she thought she was taking control, buying drugs to quiet the noise in her head. In reality, she was stepping into a psychological snare that had been years in the making. Eddie noticed the change immediately, her body freezing mid-conversation. He called her name. In her mind, the trailer had dissolved into a nightmare realm of dead vines and frozen clock faces. Her body lifted into the air in the real world while Eddie scrambled backward, panic flooding his voice. Then came the sound that would haunt him forever. One bone, then another. Her jaw unhinged with a sickening pop. Chrissy Cunningham was dead, but her death wasn't just murder. It was an announcement to Hawkins, "I can reach anyone." The second person Vecna killed was Fred Benson, the quiet school reporter who lived every day in Rewind. Fred didn't have Chrissy's popularity or charm. A year earlier, Fred had been driving when his car struck and killed a pedestrian. Every night, he'd replay those final seconds. Vecna thrives on guilt. He doesn't need to convince you you're a monster. He just needs to find the part of you that already believes it and whisper, "You're absolutely right." Fred's hallucinations began as fragments bleeding into his waking life. He'd find himself standing in a church filled with people who wouldn't look at him, all whispering the same word, murderer. That morning with Nancy Wheeler, covering what should have been a routine story, Fred's carefully constructed reality finally crumbled. Fred tried to back away, but there's nowhere to run when the thing hunting you lives inside your own head. His body rose into the air, limbs twisting until they snapped like brittle wood. Another perfect kill. Another step in a plan that Hawkins was only beginning to understand. The third victim was Patrick McKinney, who seemed like the last person who would fall to some supernatural killer. Star of the basketball team, popular with everyone, always at the center of the action. The kind of guy who commanded attention wherever he went. But confidence is just armor, and Patrick's had cracks that went back years. What his teammates didn't see were the bruises hidden under his jersey. Patrick's father believed in toughening up, and his version of discipline came with fists and fury. The visions began as sensory fragments, dark water seeping from walls where no pipes existed, the sound of clocks chiming in empty rooms. Patrick tried to push through like he always did, but you can't outrun what's already inside your head. during that frantic boat chase across Lover's Lake, with Jason and the team hunting for Eddie Munson, Patrick's world finally gave way. His body rose above the water, like he was being pulled by invisible strings. The sound of breaking bones echoed across the lake as Jason watched his best friend die in the most impossible way imaginable. In that moment of trauma and confusion, Jason's mind made the only connection it could handle. Eddie Munson had to be responsible. The truth, that something far worse was hunting them, was too big, too impossible to process. Sometimes we choose the lie that lets us sleep at night over the truth that keeps us awake forever. But Vecna's next target was different. Max Mayfield wasn't just another victim. She was the one who figured out the pattern, who saw the trap closing around her, and who decided to fight back anyway. Max had been haunted by Billy's death for months. Not just by grief, but by the complexity of mourning someone you'd both loved and hated. Billy had protected her and terrorized her. His death had devastated her and freed her. The guilt of feeling relief was eating her alive, one sleepless night at a time. She'd started writing letters, not suicide notes, but something sadder. Final conversations with people she'd stopped believing she deserved to keep. Chrissy, Fred, Patrick, all broken, all guilty, all perfect prey for something that fed on pain. She knew her name was next on the list. But here's what separated Max from the others. When she realized she was being hunted, she decided to run toward the danger instead of away from it. When Max visited Chrissy's grave, she was conducting reconnaissance. If she was going to die, she wanted to understand how. If there was a fight coming, she wanted to see it coming. The worst part was that it knew exactly what to say to destroy her. Every cruel word, every moment of resentment, every flash of relief she'd felt when the Mind Flayer finally took him, it all came pouring out like poison from a wound. But Max had something the others didn't: friends who'd figured out the lifeline. When Kate Bush's voice broke through the nightmare, running up that hill, it wasn't just music. It was every good memory flooding back at once. Skating with the boys, late-night movies, moments of pure joy that felt like they belonged to another life. She ran toward that song like her life depended on it. Because it did. Max escaped that day, but Vecna doesn't forget failures. And he doesn't forgive easily. While Vecna prepared his endgame, another death occurred, one that felt like justice finally catching up to its target. Dr. Martin Brenner, the man who'd spent decades breaking children and calling it science, met his end in a hail of military gunfire. Brenner thought he was untouchable. For years, he treated kids like lab rats, convinced that his vision of creating psychic weapons justified any cruelty. He'd shaped 11 into a killer. Before her, he tried to control a boy named Henry Creel, the same boy who would become Vecna. His fatal mistake was believing that broken children stayed broken forever. When those military helicopters descended on the desert facility, Brenner still believed he was the one pulling the strings. Right up until the bullet found his back, and he realized that all his carefully laid plans meant nothing against the monster he'd helped create years ago. Vecna didn't need to touch Brenner directly. Sometimes revenge is just being in exactly the right place when karma finally comes calling. By the time our heroes understood Vecna's true plan, time was running out. 4 kills would open 4 gates, merging Hawkins with the Upside Down forever. 3 were already dead. Max's name was written in blood at the top of his list. When Max entered his world for the final time, there was no frantic chase scene. This time, Vecna took his time, savoring every moment as he peeled away her defenses layer by layer. And when he was finished breaking her mind, he broke her body. 467 seconds, Max Mayfield was dead. Her heart stopped. Her limbs snapped. Blood ran from her eyes as Lucas held her lifeless body and screamed her name. But 67 seconds was enough. Even as 11 fought from miles away to restart Max's heart, dragging her back from whatever dark place she'd gone, the damage was already done. 4 deaths: Chrissy, Fred, Patrick, and Max, if only for a minute. 4 gates tearing reality apart at the seams. The ground beneath Hawkins cracked open like an egg, revealing a wound that would never heal. What followed wasn't just property damage, it was a massacre. Buildings collapsed. Fires erupted from the earth itself. Cars were swallowed whole. Dozens of innocent people died that night. None of them had heard mysterious clocks or seen impossible visions. They died simply because they were in the wrong place when Vecna's plan reached its climax. Their names were never spoken. Their stories were never told. but they mattered just as much as anyone else who fell to Vecna's hunger. Max survived, but not in any way that mattered. Her body lies in a hospital bed, machines keeping her breathing, bones slowly healing in casts from head to toe. Vecna didn't just break her body, he shattered her mind, scattering the pieces somewhere even 11 can't follow. And somewhere in the darkness between life and death, and not every loss was tied to Vecna. Some characters suffered fates they simply didn't deserve. From Barb Holland being killed simply for showing up to a pool party to Bob Newby, who died saving people he barely knew, Stranger Things is filled with tragic deaths of characters who didn't deserve their fate. In this video, we'll be looking at every person who met an unfair end in Hawkins. Bob Holland, Nancy Wheeler's best friend, and one of the earliest tragedies of Stranger Things. Barb was never meant to be a hero. She was a quiet, loyal teenager, the type of friend who reminded Nancy of homework, kept her grounded, and offered her company when she was nervous about new experiences. She wasn't outgoing like Nancy, she wasn't looking for adventure, and yet she was the one who paid the price. At Steve Harrington's house party, Barb reluctantly tagged along with Nancy. Everyone else was drinking, flirting, and having fun, but Barb stayed outside, sitting by the pool. She had just cut her hand on a beer can, and while Nancy disappeared upstairs with Steve, Barb was left alone in the dark. That's when the Demogorgon appeared. In a blink, she was dragged into the Upside Down, screaming for help that never came. For episodes, Nancy wondered where Barb was. By the time we saw her again, she was already gone, her lifeless body cocooned in the Upside Down's vines. What made Barb's death so haunting wasn't just its brutality, it was its pointlessness. She was just a teenage girl who wanted to protect her friend. But in Hawkins, even the innocent get swallowed by the darkness. Bob Newby, one of the purest souls in the series, and perhaps the most undeserving of the fate he met. Unlike many characters who were pulled into the supernatural chaos of Hawkins, Bob chose to help, and that choice cost him his life. Bob was Joyce Byers' boyfriend, a kind-hearted man who ran the local Radio Shack. He cared for Jonathan and Will as if they were his own kids, and for a while, it seemed like Joyce had finally found someone who could make her happy. When Will's connection to the Mind Flayer deepened in Season 2, Bob stepped in where others hesitated. He offered solutions, advice, and most importantly, hope. When the Demodogs infiltrated Hawkins Lab, chaos erupted. The power was out, doors were locked, and everyone was trapped inside with monsters closing in. Bob didn't hesitate. He volunteered to reset the power and unlock the doors. Joyce begged him not to, but Bob knew someone had to do it. With only a flashlight and his knowledge of computers, he succeeded. The lights came back on, the doors unlocked, and Joyce, Will, Hopper, and the others were able to escape. Bob made it out of the control room, running for his life as Demodogs tore through the building. For a moment, it seemed like he would make it. He reached the lobby, smiled at Joyce waiting for him, and then, it happened. A Demodog lunged from the side, dragging him to the ground. More swarmed, tearing into him as Joyce screamed. Hopper tried to pull her back, but it was too late. Bob's sacrifice was complete. He saved everyone, but he would never walk out of that building. Alexei, better known to fans as Smirnov, was never meant to be a hero. He was a Russian scientist, brought to Hawkins as part of the mission to reopen the gate beneath Starcourt Mall. For most of his life, Alexei was simply following orders, a cog in the Soviet machine. Yet in a single season, he became one of the most beloved characters on the show. When Hopper, Joyce, and Murray captured him, he was terrified. He barely spoke English, constantly looked over his shoulder, and at first, it seemed he was just another enemy. But quickly, Alexei's real nature came through. He wasn't ruthless or calculating. He was curious, childlike even, and quietly funny. His obsession with cherry Slurpees became an iconic part of the season. For the first time in his life, Alexei was free, experiencing small joys he'd never been allowed before. As the days went by, Hopper and Joyce realized he wasn't loyal to his country, he was loyal to survival. And survival meant switching sides. Without him, the group never would have uncovered the truth about the Russians under Starcourt. But Alexei's innocence was also his downfall. He won a Looney Tunes plush and laughed like a kid. In that moment, it seemed like he might truly become part of the group. Then, in an instant, it was taken away. Grigory, the relentless Russian enforcer, found him. Without hesitation, he put a bullet in Alexei, leaving him bleeding out in the middle of the fair while families walked by unaware. Murray tried to save him, but it was too late. Alexei's laughter turned into silence, his first taste of freedom ending in tragedy. Eddie Munson. Eddie Munson was a misfit, the metalhead leader of the Hellfire Club, and someone who never quite fit into the world of Hawkins High. Eddie went from an outcast hiding in his uncle's trailer to one of the most iconic heroes of the entire series. His story began with tragedy. Eddie was the only witness to Chrissy Cunningham's horrifying death at his trailer. The town branded him a murderer, with Jason Carver and the basketball team hunting him down. Eddie could have run away, left Hawkins, and saved himself, but he didn't. Instead, he stayed with Dustin, Mike, and the others, standing up when it mattered most. Tasked with distracting the Demobats so Nancy and Steve could get to Vecna, he climbed to the roof of his uncle's trailer, picked up his guitar, and performed Metallica's Master of Puppets in the most metal moment of the series. The swarm of Demobats turned their attention to him, just as planned. But when it came time to escape, Eddie made a choice. Instead of running, he stayed behind. And when he finally fell, he died in Dustin's arms, telling him not to change, to keep his courage alive. Chrissy Cunningham. Chrissy's death in Season 4 was one of the most haunting in Stranger Things. A cheerleader, popular and adored on the outside, but inside, she was struggling with something darker. Chrissy lived under the weight of her mother's verbal abuse, her own insecurities, and pressures that no one else could see. She smiled in the hallways, but Vecna preyed on the trauma she carried within. Her path crossed with Eddie in an unexpected way. Eddie offered her an escape from her pain. Vecna invaded her mind, twisting her memories, trapping her in a nightmare. As Eddie searched for her in panic, Chrissy levitated, bones snapping, eyes rolling. Eddie could only watch, powerless to stop it. Her death wasn't just horrifying, it set everything else in motion. The arena victims. Sometimes, Stranger Things shows us death not for heroes or villains, but for nameless men caught in horror. In Season 4, Hopper discovered the Russian prison's darkest secret, a caged Demogorgon. Prisoners, starved and terrified, were thrown into the arena like gladiators, forced to fight something beyond human understanding. They didn't sign up for this. The gates opened, and the prisoners clutched whatever crude weapons they had been handed. For a brief moment, they believed they had a chance. Then the Demogorgon appeared, towering, alien, unstoppable. It tore through the men mercilessly, ripping them apart as Hopper watched in horror. Their screams echoed in the stone chamber, cut short one by one, until only Hopper remained standing. Fred Benson. Fred Benson was Nancy Wheeler's colleague at the Hawkins High newspaper, a quiet student with a haunted past. He wasn't a fighter, he wasn't a soldier, he was just a teenager who wanted to belong. But Vecna doesn't care about belonging, he cares about breaking people from the inside out. Fred's trauma was his guilt. He carried the memory of a car accident, one that left another person dead, and Vecna used it to tear him apart. In Season 4, as Nancy and Fred drove to investigate the Creel house, Fred began slipping into hallucinations. A police officer appeared on the side of the road, accusing him of murder. By the time Fred stumbled into the woods, he was lost in the nightmare. Then, just like Chrissy, his body levitated, bones snapping, eyes gouging inward. Nancy could only scream as Fred was slaughtered in broad daylight. Fred's death was cruel because he wasn't dangerous, he wasn't corrupt. He was just a kid wrestling with guilt that most of us could never carry. But for every tragedy, there are characters who stand far above the rest. Let's see who truly ranks among the strongest. Powers in Stranger Things don't always look the same. Some fight with their minds, some with their fists. From lifting trucks to tearing minds apart across dimensions, these powers weren't just tricks, they changed the course of the story. These are the top 10 strongest characters in Stranger Things, ranked. Number 10, Eddie Munson. Eddie Munson didn't start out strong. He started out running. When Chrissy Cunningham died in his trailer, levitating, screaming, and contorting in a way that no human body should, Eddie's world shattered. Not just because he witnessed it, but because nobody would believe he didn't cause it. From that moment, he was a hunted man. Eddie made a decision. He would stop running. Eddie never had powers, but what he had was heart, and that made him dangerous. In the Upside Down, he wasn't the strongest. He grabbed his Warlock guitar, stood atop his trailer in the alternate dimension, and shredded Metallica's Master of Puppets loud enough to shake the sky. The bats came. The monsters swarmed. And he could have run, but he didn't. He didn't survive. But he changed the shape of the fight. Bought time for Dustin. It was a sacrifice that only someone brave and strong could have made. Number 9, Jim Hopper. Jim Hopper wasn't born a warrior. He became one. In Season 1, he starts as a man numbing himself with cigarettes and booze. But when Joyce Byers comes to him with a missing child and flickering lights, something clicks. And before long, he's punching government agents, breaking into Hawkins Lab, and standing at the gates of the Upside Down. He survives more than any normal human should. Demogorgons, Russian torture chambers, and even death itself. When he was thought to be vaporized at the end of Season 3, Hopper instead found himself in a Kamchatka prison. But Hopper refused to break. He killed a Demogorgon with a sword. More than his physical strength, Hopper's emotional core is what keeps him standing. His bond with Eleven isn't just fatherly, it's fierce. Hopper became the kind of man he once couldn't even recognize. A man who doesn't run. A man who fights for others. That makes him stronger than any weapon the Russians or the Upside Down could throw at him. Number 8, Dr. Martin Brenner. Cold, calculated, and undeniably powerful, not in in body, but in mind. This is the man who created the Hawkins Lab program, who weaponized psychic children. He didn't just control Eleven, he created her environment, manipulated her mind. Brenner was there when Henry Creel, the first test subject, 001, lost control. He witnessed the destruction of the Rainbow Room, saw the corpses of his other children on the floor, and even after that, he didn't quit. Eleven was his greatest success, but also his deepest fear. And still, he pushed her, trained her. But Brenner wasn't just a manipulative scientist. He was resilient. He builds Nina, the sensory deprivation program meant to restore Eleven's powers. In his final moments, Brenner carries Eleven through the desert while bleeding from a sniper's bullet. He begs for her forgiveness. She doesn't give it. But his strength isn't in redemption. Brenner's strength was never in kindness. It was in control. And sometimes, the scariest power is the one that doesn't scream. Number 7. Demogorgon. The Demogorgon was the first creature we ever saw crawl out of the Upside Down, and from the moment it arrived, it changed the world. It stalked and devoured without hesitation. In Season 1, it became the face of every child's nightmare in Hawkins, the thing that took Will Byers in the dead of night and dragged him across dimensions without leaving a single trace. It hunted on instinct, and it killed Bob. Even a group of armed men with guns and armor couldn't take it down. It moved faster than their bullets, climbed walls like a spider, and cracked skulls open like eggs. What made the Demogorgon terrifying wasn't just its strength or speed, it was its invincibility. When Eleven finally faced it, it took every ounce of her power to disintegrate it. One-on-one, no one else could have stopped it. In the Russian prison in Season 4, we saw another Demogorgon, kept as a bloodsport tool, and even after years of suffering, starved and caged, it still tore through an entire chamber of trained Russian guards in seconds. The Demogorgon doesn't evolve, and it doesn't need strategy to be powerful. It simply is. Number 6. Billy Hargrove. Possessed. Billy Hargrove was dangerous long before the Mind Flayer touched him. He was a villain by choice, a human one. But in Season 3, when the Mind Flayer claimed him, Billy became something else entirely. He lost control. This new Billy didn't just fight, he executed. He stalked and abducted townspeople, dragged them to the steel mill, and turned them into puppets for the Mind Flayer's army. He could smash through walls, shrug off punches. The Mind Flayer pushed him to manipulate, seduce, and destroy without mercy. At the Starcourt Mall, when Eleven was weakened, Billy hunted her like prey. When his hand was around her throat, Eleven did something no power could do. She reached the human inside. She reminded him of who he used to be. His mother. His beach. In that moment of clarity, he chose to resist. He turned on the Mind Flayer, knowing it meant death. Billy died as a person who chose to be strong. Number 5. Kali Prasad. 8. Kali wasn't part of the Hawkins story for long, but her presence left a mark. Kali wasn't a fighter like Hopper or a psychic battering ram like Eleven. She was something different. Her power didn't exist in the physical world. It bent the mind. Illusion. Manipulation. In Season 2, when Eleven meets her, we see a glimpse of what Eleven could become if she chose rage instead of love. Kali is fierce. She lives by a code of revenge, hunting down those who hurt her and her kind. When she faces off against a SWAT team, she doesn't throw a single punch. Instead, she makes them see things that aren't there. Number 4. The Meat Mind Flayer. It started with rats, then humans. The result was the Meat Mind Flayer, a living weapon made from the corpses and tissue of its victims. This wasn't just a puppet. It was a conscious extension of the Mind Flayer's will, connected through the psychic hive. Its true strength was revealed at the Battle of Starcourt. Eleven, already weakened, couldn't even hold it back with her mind. What makes the Meat Mind Flayer terrifying isn't just its power, it's a symptom, a tumor, a warning. Number 3. The Shadow Mind Flayer. The creature in Season 3 was only the flesh. The real Mind Flayer is something else entirely. It has no body, no heartbeat, no face. In Season 2, it entered Hawkins by possessing Will, infiltrating his mind like a virus. It created a massive underground network of tunnels, vines, and growths, all linked back to itself. Unlike the meat version, the Shadow Mind Flayer doesn't need brute strength to win. It can stretch across dimensions. When Will drew its shape, it resembled a spider because that's what it felt like, a predator above all others. The Mind Flayer doesn't just want to destroy, it wants to dominate. It's the same entity that controlled the Demobats and Demogorgons. Number 2. Vecna / Henry Creel / 1. At the top of the human hierarchy stands Vecna, born Henry Creel, transformed through trauma, hatred, and power. Henry was born with his powers, telepathy, telekinesis. He could sense the filth under the surface of people's minds, and it disgusted him. Vecna is terrifying because he's not just strong, he's meticulous. He doesn't rush. When he kills, he does it slowly, haunting his victims with visions of their guilt, shame, and trauma. Chrissy, Fred, Patrick, they all died screaming in their minds minds before their bones even snapped. He bends the power of the Upside Down to his will. Vecna is a mastermind and a monster. Number 1, 11. There was always something different about her. From the moment Dr. Brenner saw her potential, she became a vessel for power that even he didn't fully understand. At her weakest, she ripped open dimensions. She could snap necks with a glance and vanish entire creatures into dust. She closed the gate, not just physically, but emotionally. She sent one through the gate not out of vengeance, but sorrow. In her final battle with Vecna, 11 didn't win with strength. She won with memory, with love. 11 is more than just a girl with powers. She's the one being who has seen the Upside Down from both sides. There are monsters in this world, but there's only one 11. And if there's hope for Hawkins, for the world, for the balance between dimensions, it begins and ends with her. And power doesn't guarantee survival. Here's who may not make it through the final season. Stranger Things has never been afraid to kill the ones we love. From Barb and Bob to Billy, Alexei, and Eddie, every season has taken someone important, proving Hawkins is a place where happy endings are rare. Now, with the final season approaching, most of the characters we followed from the start, and even those who joined later, are walking into a finale where survival isn't promised. The question isn't if someone will die, it's who, and how many more sacrifices it will take to finally end the war with Vecna. Steve Harrington. Steve's journey has been one of the most dramatic transformations in Stranger Things. From the arrogant jock in Season 1 to the selfless, bat-wielding protector of the kids, Steve has completed one of the most satisfying arcs of the series. Every season, he's gotten closer to death, whether it was being beaten bloody by Billy, poisoned by the Russians, or mauled by Vecna's bats. And yet, he always made it out. But that pattern, surviving again and again, can only last so long. The creators of the show have hinted repeatedly that Steve is in real danger in the final season. He has nothing left to prove. That's why his death would hit the hardest. If Season 5 delivers the war between Vecna and Hawkins that's been teased, Steve is the kind of character who would run straight into the fire to protect the younger ones. His death would devastate Dustin, Nancy, and Robin, and it would cement his legacy as one of the show's true heroes. Steve is ready to go out a legend, and that's exactly why the odds are stacked against him. Max Mayfield. Max already technically died in Season 4. Vecna broke her body, stopped her heart, and left her blind and shattered in a hospital bed. Only 11's intervention pulled her back, and even then, her soul was left hanging by a thread. Will she return whole, or will her story end permanently in Season 5? Max has always been one of the most tragic characters. Losing her brother Billy, dealing with abuse at home, Vecna doesn't let go, and Max may be the key to his defeat. That means she could die again, this time for good, either as a direct sacrifice or as part of destroying Vecna's psychic hold on Hawkins. Her final act may be permanent, and if Vecna has to take someone down with him, Max is the one most tied to his curse. Will Byers. From the very beginning, Stranger Things has been Will's story. He was the boy taken by the Demogorgon, the one trapped in the Upside Down, the one possessed by the Mind Flayer. And even though he was rescued, the darkness never truly left him. Season 5 is bringing the Upside Down to Hawkins in full force, and Will's fate feels tragically inevitable. But Will's unique insight into the Upside Down could also make him the key to everyone's survival. Rather than dying, he could be the one who guides them through Vecna's realm. The creators might instead choose to let Will finally find peace. Hopper. Hopper has cheated death too many times. He survived the explosion at the gate in Season 3, endured the hell of a Russian prison in Season 4, but Season 5 is different. If the show wants to break us, it will make Hopper pay the ultimate price to protect 11 and Joyce. Hopper's protective instincts could drive him to make the ultimate sacrifice, this time real and final. His death would complete his redemption arc. The creators face a choice: reward Hopper's growth with survival, or cement his heroism with sacrifice. Lucas Sinclair. Lucas has been on one of the quietest but most powerful journeys in the series. In the early seasons, he was skeptical, sarcastic, and often clashed with the group. But by Season 4, we saw his heart in full, staying with Max as she lay broken, fighting Jason in the Creel house. His love for Max has become one of the show's most emotional threads. That's exactly why he might be doomed. If Max does survive, it could be Lucas who dies in Season 5. Lucas fits the pattern, not a central figure like 11 or Mike, but someone whose death would ripple through every character. His loss would shatter Dustin, destroy Erica, and leave Max facing recovery alone. But it would also demonstrate how far he's come from the boy who wanted to quit the party. Robin Buckley. Robin has been one of the best additions to Stranger Things since Season 3. Robin has helped decode Russian transmissions, infiltrated secret labs, and fought against Vecna Vecna's forces with as much determination as anyone. But here's the thing, Robin doesn't have deep ties to the Upside Down. That makes her expendable in the larger narrative. Steve has relied on her, Nancy has grown to respect her, and the audience has come to love her quick wit and awkward honesty. If Robin dies, it would rip through the group emotionally, especially Steve. Losing her would send the message that even the most genuine people can be casualties of war. Murray Bauman. At first, Murray was comic relief, paranoid, odd, and always a step away from ridiculous. By season 4, he was flying into Russia, fighting soldiers. He's proven that even outsiders can become heroes. But that growth also puts a target on his back. Murray is the perfect candidate for a noble death. He's an adult. Stranger Things has a pattern. Every season, a quirky fan favorite dies. Bob in season 2, Alexei in season 3, Eddie in season 4. Murray fits the mold too well. Erica Sinclair. Erica has grown from Lucas's sassy younger sister into a fierce, capable member of the team. The creators of the show have never fully crossed the line of killing a younger member of the group. But if they wanted to shock the audience and make it clear that Vecna is not holding back, Erica's death would do it. Dmitry Enzo Antonov. If Dmitry returns in season 5, his fate feels almost guaranteed. The Russian guard turned ally already risked his life for Hopper in season 4. If he shows up again, it will likely be to finish what Hopper started. Enzo might throw himself into danger to save Hopper again, or to buy time for Eleven and the kids. If he dies, his sacrifice would carry weight without breaking the emotional core of the series. Karen and Ted Wheeler. The Wheelers have mostly been background noise in the chaos of Hawkins. But season 5 isn't just about individual deaths, it's about the destruction of Hawkins itself. Adults like Karen and Ted could easily become casualties. Vecna. The war isn't only about who we lose among the heroes, it's also about which monsters and masterminds will finally fall. Vecna is the final boss. From his twisted childhood in the Creel House to his transformation in Hawkins Lab, his arc has been building toward this conclusion since the very beginning. Killing Vecna won't be simple. Eleven has already fought him and barely survived. Vecna's death could easily drag one of the heroes down with him. Dr. Martin Brenner, Papa. We all saw him get shot in season 4. We saw Eleven kneel over him, but we never saw a proper burial. And in Stranger Things, that matters. If Brenner returns, it will likely be as a twisted final card in Vecna's hand. And if that happens, he can only die by Eleven's hand. The Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer is different. A creature of hive mind control, spreading infection. Killing the Mind Flayer may mean killing the Upside Down entirely. If killing the Mind Flayer requires 11 will, or even multiple heroes to fuse their lives into its destruction, then the end of Stranger Things won't be a clean win. The Mind Flayer's death isn't just an enemy defeated. It's the possibility that the entire dimension dies with it, the ones history might forget. In the chaos of season 5, these are the ones whose stories may end quietly, but not without meaning. Kali Prasad. 8. Kali was introduced in season 2 as one of 11's siblings. If Kali returns in the final season, her arc will likely end in tragedy. She could stand alongside 11 in the fight against Vecna, using her powers one last time to buy Elle a chance at victory. A final sibling moment. Argyle. From the moment he appeared in season 4, he was comic relief, and he gave fans some much-needed laughs. But Stranger Things rarely lets characters like him survive to the end. Argyle feels like the kind of character who dies suddenly, in a shocking, brutal moment that rips the humor away. Vicky. Robin's potential love interest. If the creators of the show want to break Robin, to push her into emotional despair before the end, killing Vicky would do it. The town of Hawkins. Maybe the biggest casualty of all won't be a single person, but an entire place. The Upside Down is no longer confined. The gates are open, and the town is already cracking under the weight of Vecna's curse. Entire families could vanish. Streets, schools, and homes could be swallowed into the void. Almost every character we followed has a reason to fall, whether their arc is already closed, or because their death would give meaning to someone else's survival. And Stranger Things could have looked very different. Here's the timeline where the entire story ended after just one season. Stranger Things begins with a boy going missing and a girl with shaved hair appearing in the woods. But what if that girl never made it out? What if 11 never escaped the Hawkins Lab? No egos, no cabin in the woods, no hero standing between Hawkins and the nightmare underneath. Part 1. The Missing Boy. It begins the same way. Will Byers bikes home from Mike's house. Just like always, he takes the long road through Mirkwood. The Demogorgon is still there. It still hunts, and it still drags Will into the Upside Down. But this time, there's no one to help him. When Mike, Dustin, and Lucas search for their missing friend, they just find empty woods and growing fear. Joyce still hears her son in the walls. She still strings up lights, but this time, there's no proof. No psychic who can find find Will in the void. Joyce is labeled paranoid. Hopper wants to believe her, but the evidence never appears. The lab covers everything. The search ends quietly, like so many other disappearances in Hawkins. The people move on, and Will Byers dies in the Upside Down. Barb Holland still vanishes at Steve's party. Nancy starts asking questions. Without 11 to prove that monsters are real, her investigation collapses. She's labeled the grieving friend who can't let go. Steve distances himself. The pain doesn't make her stronger, it isolates her. She never picks up a shotgun. She never steps into the Upside Down. Meanwhile, inside Hawkins Lab, 11 remains locked behind glass and steel. She still screams in the sensory deprivation tank. She still reaches into the black void. With no escape, 11 becomes the perfect tool. She's forced to open more gates, used to spy on more targets. She starts forgetting what the surface world feels like. And the gate keeps growing. With no interference, the Mind Flayer stirs. More disappearances follow, but without any evidence. It's all just conspiracy. Hopper keeps digging, but with no 11 to show him the truth, he never finds the gate. When he gets too close to the truth, he disappears too. Mike Wheeler never becomes a leader. Lucas never learns to believe. Dustin never discovers Dart. Their friendship fades. The story of Stranger Things never begins, but the nightmare beneath it keeps growing. All because 11 never ran. Part 2. The gate opens wider. With 11 locked away inside Hawkins Lab, the events that unfolded in seasons 2 and 3 take a far darker turn. The government continues its experiments, oblivious to the growing danger that pulses behind the walls of the Upside Down. The Demogorgon may have been the first predator to slip through, but it is far from the last. With 11 still used as a living weapon, Brenner and his team push her further. Forced back into the sensory deprivation tank, each time, the gate widens. By the time of what should have been Season 2's timeline, Will Byers is long dead, but the gate remains active. And without anyone to close it, the Mind Flayer finds a way in, not through a tethered boy's mind, but through Hawkins itself. It sends out its minions like Demo Dogs and Demo Bats. Nancy and Jonathan, who in another timeline would have become investigators, lovers, and warriors, remain apart. Their paths never converge. Jonathan still works quietly, haunted by a brother who was never found. Nancy buries herself in studies. Hopper is already gone. Joyce never stopped looking for answers. She's the one who starts to connect the dots when other children start disappearing, and all of them had one thing in common. They were near Hawkins Lab the week before they vanished. But with Hopper missing and Murray Bauman discredited early on, no one listens. Meanwhile, 11 begins to change. She no longer flinches when ordered to kill. The Mind Flayer sees its opportunity. With no one to stop it, it begins constructing something of its own, something like the flesh monster. But this time, there are no fireworks to distract it, no cabin to shelter its targets, no L to fight back. Max never arrives, because Billy never transferred to Hawkins without a job offer for their father. The story fractures even more. By the end of what would have been Season 3, the gate has become a tear in the world. But this time, there is no resistance. The flayed walk openly. Part 3. The danger that's coming. By the time we reach what would have been Season 4's timeline, Hawkins is unrecognizable. The Mind Flayer no longer hides. Inside Hawkins Lab, 11 is no longer a child. Her power has increased tenfold, but so has her detachment. She's a weapon now, and Brenner has long since lost control. He still gives orders, but she doesn't always follow them. Sometimes she just stares. Then something changes. The Mind Flayer reaches back through the gate, and it doesn't just want to spread, it wants to shape. Without interference from L, it has created something worse than the spider monster, worse than the flayed. In this timeline, Vecna doesn't have to rise. The Mind Flayer is his own architect now. Hawkins becomes a breeding ground for something between the Demogorgon and the human mind. Joyce is gone. Maybe disappeared. Maybe taken. Jonathan finds the drawings on Will's walls, and they make no sense. Nancy finds pieces of truth in old files at the Hawkins post before it's shut down permanently. Steve tries to call the kids back together, but there are no kids left. Just quiet people with frightened eyes and scars they don't remember getting. One night in the lab, 11 walks past a mirror and sees herself. She walks into the observation room where Brenner watches the gate pulse and speaks for the first time in days. No more. Then, everything begins to collapse. 11 doesn't escape, she detonates. Not with fire, but with force of will. She no longer just looks into the void. She connects not just to the Mind Flayer, but to everything it's touched. And in that surge of rage, regret, and retribution, she wipes it all clean. Hawkins is ruined. The gate cannot be closed. Part 4. The dominoes that never fell. It didn't end with Hawkins. The loss echoed outward, reshaping the lives of people who never even knew her name. Robin Buckley never hears the Russian code, because Dustin never builds the radio tower, because no one ever trusts Steve with anything important. Scoops Ahoy stays just a job. No bats, no blood, no babysitting. Without the kids, there's no reason to grow up. Eddie Munson never touches a guitar in a war zone, because there's no war, no bats, no Vecna. The Upside Down doesn't wait for metal. And Eddie? He stays the town freak, hunted for crimes he didn't commit in a world that never gave him a chance. There's no final stand. Just another misfit who vanishes when the darkness spreads. Erica Sinclair never squeezes through a vent. She's still sharp. The world never sees it. And Dustin? He doesn't find a mentor in Steve. Somewhere in Chicago, Kali Prasad, Subject 8, feels something missing. In the real world, she found 11. In this world, they remain strangers. And Dr. Brenner? He becomes more than a villain. He becomes her god. Because 11 never breaks free, never tastes friendship, never questions his voice in her ear. And this time, she believes it. Not because it's true, but because it's all she knows. He trains her powers with surgical cruelty, dressing it up as love. And without the pain of the outside world, she never learns what love actually is. She becomes a weapon, trimmed of rebellion, not a daughter, a project. Brenner's twisted vision completes itself, and beneath it all, the gate opens. Because the Russians were never stopped. The drill under Starcourt never explodes. Hopper never sacrifices. Joyce never pulls the switches. The machine hums louder, cutting deeper into the membrane between worlds. And this time, it stays open. The Mind Flayer doesn't need puppets. It doesn't need to play chess. It walks through, unopposed. In the end, the world goes on, but it's not the same world. There's no newspaper headline about a heroic girl. She was never seen, never known, never loved. The people who might have changed everything, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, Max, they live, maybe, but not together. Not with purpose. Not with memory of what could have been. There's something missing, but they can't say what. All because one girl never ran. There's another universe where one moment changed everything. The world where 11 never escaped Hawkins Lab. The first season of Stranger Things ended with an unfinished story. The monster was gone, the gate was closed, and 11 had vanished to save everyone. Hawkins tried to move on, pretending life was normal again, but Will still felt the Upside Down breathing through him. Joyce couldn't stop checking the lights, and Hopper kept leaving food in the woods. What if it all ended here? What would it look like if Stranger Things ended after season 1? No Mind Flayer, no Max and Billy, no Starcourt, no Vecna, just a quiet town pretending the nightmare was over. The girl who vanished. The first season of Stranger Things ended with 11 facing the Demogorgon inside Hawkins Middle School. Bleeding, shaking, exhausted, as the creature jumped at the party, she raised her hand and unleashed everything she had left. When the smoke cleared, the monster was gone, and so was she. The season ended with Will Byers waking up in the hospital. Mike, Dustin, and Lucas were shown, smiling through tears, but their victory felt hollow. The one who saved them wasn't there to share it. She's gone. Mike keeps her walkie-talkie on his desk, hoping she'll answer. For him, the story doesn't end. The others try to move on. The sheriff and the secret. Some nights, Hopper drives out to the woods with no real reason. He brings a box of Eggos. In this ending, that act isn't a clue or a tease for another season. It's closure. The lab remains sealed. The town moves on. But those who lived it, Joyce, Hopper, Mike, and the rest, they know. The town that pretends to forget. Hawkins goes back to normal, or at least, it looks that way. The school repairs the gym. The Christmas decorations go up. The news moves on to the next story. But underneath that surface, the town feels haunted. The perfect ending that hurts. If Stranger Things ended after season 1, it would have felt incomplete, but maybe that's what would have made it perfect. A story that didn't try to explain everything, because not everything needs to be explained. A story that ends where the mystery still breathes. 11 would remain a ghost, a sacrifice that saved them but cost her everything. It would have been the kind of ending people still argue about years later, because Stranger Things was never really about the monsters. It was about what happens after. About loss, memory, and the people who keep living even when the lights stop blinking. A world without her return. The moment 11 reappeared in season 2 wasn't just a reveal, it was a resurrection. For nearly a year, Mike kept calling out for her, and when she finally returned, it felt like a miracle. In a version where the show ends after season 1, that moment never happens. Mike never gets to see her again. He grows up believing she died saving him. The group drifts apart. The darkness that would stay buried. In season 2, we learned that the monster wasn't gone, it had only changed form. The Mind Flayer, the shadow that lingered in Will's body, turned trauma into something cosmic. Without another season, that pain never gets named. Joyce would never get to fight for her son again. Hopper would never get to become the father figure he was meant to be. The people we we'd never meet. Without Season 2, there's no Max Mayfield. No redhead on a skateboard. Her friendship with the boys reshaped the group entirely. Her rivalry with Lucas, her bond with Eleven, her grief for Billy later on. And there's no Billy either. No reflection of what hate and neglect can turn a person into. We'd never meet Robin Buckley either. Without her, Steve stays a character frozen in his high school redemption arc, never evolving beyond the boy with a bat and a guilty conscience. The show loses one of its most important pieces of heart, the battles that never happen. No sequel means no Mind Flayer towering over Starcourt Mall. No kids fighting monsters under neon lights. The town would never learn that the Upside Down wasn't just a crack in the world. The story never grows beyond the woods and basements. But it's not just the battles we'd lose, it's the bonds formed through them. Hopper dying in Russia and clawing his way back home. Joyce crossing the world to save him. Max fighting through Vecna's curse. Her favorite song pulling her back to life. The world stays smaller, colder, quieter. The meaning we'd never learn. If Stranger Things ended after Season 1, we'd never learn what it really means to grow up with monsters. Season 1 would have left us with mystery, but everything after it gave us meaning. The pain, the losses, the impossible fights. They're what turned Hawkins from a story about fear into a story about family. The forgotten voices. If Stranger Things had ended after Season 1, half the characters we now love wouldn't even exist. What came later didn't just expand the story. It gave it depth, humor, and heart. Without them, Hawkins would have stayed hollow. We would have never met Murray Bauman, the conspiracy theorist who started as comic relief and became the unexpected voice of reason. Without him, Joyce and Hopper's story in Season 3 never even happens. Then there's Dr. Owens, a man who proved that not every scientist in Stranger Things was a villain. He was the moral balance to Brenner's cruelty. Without him, Eleven would have had no one to guide her after the lab's fall. In the Season 1 only version of the story, the legacy of Hawkins Lab ends with Brenner, cold, manipulative, and inhuman. The children who would never grow. Without later seasons, we also lose the evolution of the kids, the way they grow from scared children into something closer to heroes. Erica Sinclair, Lucas's sharp-tongued little sister, would have remained just a background voice yelling from another room. But in the real story, she becomes something more, a symbol of how courage can come from the most unexpected places. She'd never crawl through those mall vents, never prove that the younger generation was ready to fight their own monsters. And Dustin, he was already lovable in Season 1, but it's the later seasons that show his genius in full bloom. His bond with Steve Harrington, their hilarious, heartfelt friendship, became one of the emotional anchors of the show. Steve remains the guy who loses the girl and fades into the background. Dustin remains the kid who tells jokes to mask his fear. The villains who'd never rise. Without later seasons, the story never finds its true monster. The Demogorgon was terrifying, but it was just the surface. The Mind Flayer, Vecna, the realization that the Upside Down was more than a place. It was a mind. We never learn about Henry Creel, about Brenner's number 1, or about how the experiment that made Eleven was born from something darker. Ending after Season 1 means never seeing the connection between Elle and Vecna, never realizing that the monster she fought in the beginning was once human. The evolution that never happens. Season 1 was fear. Season 2 was grief. Season 3 was chaos. Season 4 was trauma finally catching up. If the story ended early, the characters would have stayed children forever. They never would have learned that monsters don't always crawl out of portals. The later seasons gave meaning to the fear. Max's loss, Eleven's guilt, Will's quiet suffering, the world without its music. We would have lost the soul of the show, the soundtracks that turned emotion into memory. Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill, the Clash's Should I Stay or Should I Go, Journey's Separate Ways. These weren't just songs, they were lifelines. They reminded us that music could save someone, the bonds that would have stayed broken. If the story stopped after Season 1, the characters would never find peace. Hopper never gets the daughter he lost. Eleven never learns what it means to belong. Joyce never gets to be happy again. Mike never learns to lead. Will never finds his voice. And the friendships that carried the show, Dustin and Steve, Max and Eleven, Lucas and Erica, never even begin. Every arc stays unfinished. That's what makes the thought of it so haunting. Not the monsters that would have stayed in the dark, but the people who would have stayed trapped in grief. Stranger Things taught us that growing up means facing what hurts, not running from it. Ending early means freezing everyone at the moment before they heal. The story would end not with resolution, but with silence, the kind that follows when you hang up a phone before the other person says goodbye. If Stranger Things ended after Season 1, it would have been a mystery that faded with time. But because it didn't, it became something far more powerful, a story about memory, love, and the price of growing up in a world where monsters wear many faces. The real Hawkins didn't stay frozen in 1983. It kept burning, breaking, healing, and changing. And maybe that's why we're still here, still talking about it, still waiting for the final season. All of this leads us back to the creatures caught between both worlds. Here's why being a Demogorgon is far worse than it looks. It starts in darkness. Total, suffocating black. There's no air, no warmth, just endless space filled with shifting winds and rotting clouds. This is the upside down, and you, a Demogorgon. But don't mistake that for a blessing. From the moment you're born, if you can even call it that, you're a weapon with no say in your own creation. Molded by the Mind Flayer, built from spores, fungus, and rage. You never had a childhood, no parents. You have no name, no voice, no memories. The Shadow Mind Flayer doesn't need you to think. It just needs you to kill. Tall, muscular, fast, and horrifying. Your face is a 5-petaled flower of teeth, with no eyes, no soul, and no fear. You can walk between dimensions when commanded. You're the Mind Flayer's tool to reach through into another world, to drag it all back into the dark. And when you first cross into Hawkins, Indiana, the new world hits you like a hammer. You don't belong here. The gate is open. You're sent through like a rabid hound let off its leash. Suddenly, you're alone. You follow the scent of fear, tracking your prey like a ghost. A deer first, then Will Byers. You drag him back into your world. He survives. Most don't. Most are eaten, absorbed into the tendrils, but Will doesn't die. And that's where things start to change. You were supposed to be the predator, but something in him resists you. Soon, people start fighting back. First it's the sheriff, then the mother, and then her. 11. The girl who bleeds when she reaches into the void. You've never felt fear before, but when she finds you, watches you, pushes back, you feel something close. She's not prey. She's something else entirely. When she confronts you at Hawkins Middle School, your body resists the pull. Your instincts scream to run, but you can't. She doesn't just fight you. She rips you apart atom by atom. You disintegrate into nothing. Just an empty death in a foreign world. And that's only one Demogorgon. There are others, and they all meet the same fate. Sent out like pawns. Burned alive, crushed, shot, exploded. Because the truth is, it sucks to be a Demogorgon. You're not a villain. You're a weapon, used and discarded by minds far greater than your own. You don't get a story that ends in peace. Death doesn't mean the end. Because even after your body's been torn apart by 11's power, more of you exist. The upside down doesn't care about individuality. You're not unique. The Mind Flayer can copy and paste as needed. And in another place, in another time, a new version of you rises again. This time, it's not Hawkins. A facility. Russian. You're not let loose this time. You're caged. The humans here don't know what you are. They try to make you theirs. You're still dangerous, but not uncontrollable. You spend your days in glass cells, snarling behind walls of steel. They let you out. Just for a moment. But that moment is enough. You do what you were built for. Tear, bite, scream. The humans fall like cattle. But here's the thing. They fight back. Guns, fire, electricity. And once again, you bleed. You end up back in the dark. Again. And this time, there's no gate. You begin to starve. Because no one's opening that door anymore. They've learned their lesson. You're not their pet. You're their mistake. Meanwhile, back in Hawkins, the tunnels you helped carve beneath the surface still breathe. And in the minds of those who survived you, especially in Will, you didn't kill him, but you might as well have. He wakes up in the night gasping, sweating. Then there's Dart, the baby version. Cute. Dustin calls him a pet, feeds him nougat. He grows. He molts. And one day, he remembers what he really is. A demo dog, sure, but still part of you. Another chapter in your cursed bloodline. And he kills. Again. Because that's all any of you were made to do. Even the soldiers who walk the upside down don't understand the hell you live in. To them, it's just another dimension. Dangerous, yes, but explorable. But you were born in that world. And you know it doesn't play fair. And that's the truth they'll never understand. There is no freedom, no joy. And if you fail to serve your purpose, the Mind Flayer doesn't forgive. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is, somewhere deep inside, you feel the pain. You don't cry, but something in your body reacts when you're hurt. But no one cares. Because to the world, you're just the monster. The one with the flower face. Vecna. He wasn't part of you before, but now, he's the one pulling the strings. And when he moves, you follow, without knowing why. You're a weapon of fear. Because this time, the prey isn't just screaming from pain. They're screaming from memories. Memories Vecna forced them to relive. You don't understand them, but you feel them. Their fear feeds something in you. When the gates begin to open across Hawkins again. You're pulled through again, dragged between dimensions like a puppet on frayed strings. And now, the humans are fighting back harder than ever. They've seen you before. They shoot before you even get close. You're here to distract. A memory from Season 1, repurposed as a threat for Season 5. The new kids, the ones 11 saved, Max, Lucas, Steve, Robin, they don't even flinch when they see you anymore. You used to be the monster in their closets. Now you're background noise. And in a town that's already faced the worst, you're just another old ghost. The experiments, the ones the Russians did, the ones Hawkins Lab did, scarred you. You're falling apart. It's already too late. The humans are setting traps. All your old enemies. And this time, they've got practice. Eddie's gone, but they remember what he did. And now they fight like they've already killed you. That's why it sucks to be a Demogorgon. They don't fear you anymore. They fear what created you. And even you don't know what that is. They kill you, burn you, move on. It's not personal. It's just routine. Now that the real nightmares are writing the next chapters, your page has already turned. You won't be remembered. You'll just be gone. Because in the end, that's why it sucks to be a Demogorgon. And when the final battle comes, when Hawkins stands between everything normal and everything not, you won't be on either side. You'll be somewhere in between, forgotten. And finally, let's bring everything together with a complete recap of the events of Season 4. Episode 1, The Hellfire Club. It's been 6 months since the Battle of Starcourt, but Hawkins hasn't healed. The damage it left behind still lingers, in the town, in the people, and especially in the ones who know what really happened. The official story blames a fire, but those who were there, those who lost, know better. And now, the next chapter begins. Joyce, Jonathan, Will, and 11 are thousands of miles away in California, trying to start over. 11 writes letters to Mike like everything's fine, like school is okay, but it's not. She's lost her powers. She's lost Hopper. She's lost the one part of herself that used to make her feel anything close to strong. Getting bullied, pushed, humiliated. Mike is still in Hawkins, still with Dustin and Lucas. Lucas has joined the basketball team. Dustin is still the same, obsessed with radios and strategy games and clever plans. The party isn't what it used to be. At school, a new force is rising. Eddie Munson, Dungeon Master of the Hellfire Club. And right now, with the basketball championship and a D&D campaign finale on the same night, speaking of Max, she's unraveling. Her headphones are always on. She doesn't talk about Billy. She doesn't talk about much. Billy's death hangs over her like a shadow she refuses to face. Meanwhile, Hopper isn't dead. Joyce doesn't believe the story either. And when she receives a package, a wooden box with a Russian doll inside, she knows it's not just a coincidence. She turns to Murray Bauman. He's still hiding out in his cabin, still speaking in conspiracies, but when Joyce shows him the message, even he can't brush it off. Back in Hawkins, Chrissy Cunningham, the popular cheerleader, is seeing things. Terrible things. And no one notices. Except Eddie, the freak. The one everyone avoids. They cross paths in the woods. She wants something to take the edge off. He gives her laughter instead. But Chrissy is already marked. That night, while the basketball team plays their championship game, Eddie brings Chrissy back to his uncle's trailer. It's quiet, but in the silence, something ancient awakens. Chrissy's body lifts off the ground. Bones snap, limbs twist, her mind shattered by things no one else can see. Eddie watches, frozen in terror. Eddie runs. The episode ends not with answers, but with a new kind of terror. One that doesn't crawl. It hunts with purpose. Stranger Things Season 4 doesn't start small. Episode 2, Vecna's Curse. Eddie is gone, hiding. News spreads fast. Chrissy is dead. The town erupts. Sheriff Powell wants answers. Officer Callahan has none. And Jason Carver, Chrissy's boyfriend and captain of the basketball team, hears the whispers that Eddie Munson, the town freak, was the last person to see her alive. He wants vengeance, dragging the rest of the team into a hunt that's about to spiral out of control. Meanwhile, Nancy Wheeler is following her instincts. She's back working at the school paper, trying to focus on graduation, college, her future. But something feels off. When Fred Benson, her fellow editor, catches wind of Chrissy's death, he pushes for a real investigation. They head to the trailer park, looking for details. Every local they speak to describes the murder like it was something unnatural. And that's when Fred starts seeing things. Fred's visions are darker than Chrissy's. A burning car. And then, just like Chrissy, he hears the ticking. Max is starting to put things together. together. She's been watching. She doesn't know what it all means yet, but her instincts tell her this is more than a murder. She visits the trailer, the scene of the crime. Back in California, things aren't much better. Eleven's facade is breaking. Her smile is gone. Her fake stories to Mike about having friends and fitting in finally crumble when he arrives for spring break and sees the truth. Angela, the bully who's made Elle's life miserable, humiliates her at the roller rink in front of everyone. And Elle snaps, not with powers, but with a skate to Angela's face. 11 becomes the villain again. Mike doesn't understand. He wants to. 11 is losing her grip on her identity. Meanwhile, back in Hawkins, Fred is missing. Nancy is panicking, and when she finds him, it's already too late. Just like Chrissy, Fred levitates into the air, and from the shadows, something watches. Vecna, a name not yet known. Each victim carries guilt, trauma, pain. He haunts them with their worst memories. Dustin starts to suspect a pattern. With Max, Lucas, Steve, and Robin at his side, he pieces together the timeline of Chrissy and Fred's deaths. Both victims experienced headaches, nightmares, and visions before they died. And as Jason riles up his teammates to start a manhunt for Eddie, something much worse begins to take shape. Episode 3, The Monster and the Superhero. 11 is being interrogated. After the roller rink incident, she's arrested for assault and thrown into a holding cell. Meanwhile, Nancy and Robin go to the library to dig through archived microfiche, searching for anything that might explain these deaths. They find an article from 1959 about a boy named Henry Creel, who claimed his house was haunted. Henry's family died mysteriously. Back in Hawkins, Jason's manhunt for Eddie is growing more aggressive. He's convinced the Hellfire Club is some satanic cult. He corners members and stirs up fear in a town already on edge. Eddie is still hiding at Reefer Rick's, but when Dustin finally finds him and convinces him that they believe him, that they've seen monsters too, Lucas, torn between loyalty to his basketball team and his real friends, he ditches Jason and returns to the group. Max's symptoms are worsening, and the clock, it appears to her again. They rush to the school counselor's office to find files on Chrissy and Fred. Both had reported headaches, nightmares, and visions. Max's name is on the list too. She's next. They don't know how long she has, but it's not days, it's hours. Meanwhile, in California, Mike, Will, and Jonathan realize 11 is gone. Disappeared without a word. The episode ends with Max walking through the halls of Hawkins Middle School, alone. The curse is beginning, and time is running out. Episode 4, Dear Billy. Max is running out of time. Every second feels like a countdown, so she starts writing letters to everyone she loves. Meanwhile, Nancy and Robin head to Penhost Asylum to meet Victor Creel, the man who survived what sounds like the exact same curse in the 1950s. He tells them about a demon that invaded his mind and taking his family from him. He describes music echoing through the house during the attacks. That's when they realize it. Music isn't just sound, it's an anchor. In California, Mike, Will, Jonathan, and Argyle on the run, with the government chasing 11. The dead agent in the back seat warns them with his dying breath that they're being hunted by people who think she's behind everything. Before he dies, he gives them a pen, and inside it is a coded message pointing them to Nina. Meanwhile, in Hawkins, Dustin, Lucas, Steve, and the rest of the group follow Max as she visits Billy's grave. She leaves her letter. The air feels heavier here. Then, without warning, Max is gone. Her friends call her name, but she doesn't answer. She's standing in Vecna's world, and Billy is standing in front of her. He blames her for his death, tells her she wanted him gone. Back in the real world, Dustin figures it out. Max is in the trance, remembering what Nancy and Robin learned from Creel. Music. They play her favorite song, Running Up That Hill. Max sees a tear open above her. Her friends are screaming her name. She starts to run, but Vecna isn't letting her go. He lifts her off the ground, bones tightening, eyes rolling back. Her memories flash before her, moments with Lucas, Dustin, 11. She leaps, reaching for the light, and then she's back, shaking in her friend's arms. The curse is broken. For now. The camera cuts to the upside down. Vecna stands in his lair, watching the surface world. He's angry. His victims were meant to feed him, to open the gates. But one escaped. And though Max is safe for now, something tells her this isn't over. Episode 5, The Nina Project. 11 is trapped between the past and the present. Inside the underground facility in Nevada, under the control of Dr. Brenner and Dr. Owens, she is submerged into the Nina Project, a sensory deprivation tank designed to force her to relive key memories. Brenner watches from behind the glass, his voice always calm but cold. Owens tries to encourage her, calling her brave, but to 11, it feels like punishment disguised as therapy. Meanwhile, in Hawkins, the group begins to split paths. Nancy, Robin, Steve, Dustin, Lucas, Lucas and Max learn that every one of Vecna's victims had a connection to the Creel house. They decide to investigate the house. The Creel house is a monument to nightmares. They notice the strange electromagnetic pulses, the same flickers of energy that always come when the Upside Down is near. They follow the readings to the attic. Back in Lenora, Mike, Will, Jonathan, and Argyle finally crack the code left by the dying agent. It leads them to a military-style compound in the middle of the desert. They realize this is where 11 must be. But even amidst all this chaos, something quiet brews between Mike and Will. In the Upside Down, Vecna continues to expand. His connection to Hawkins is no longer subtle. Back at the Nina facility, 11 finally starts to remember the boy. Subject 001. He was always there during her moments of failure. He told her not to trust Brenner. She doesn't know who he really is yet, but we do. The seeds of revelation are being planted. The episode ends on multiple cliffhangers. Nancy, Steve, and the others prepare to re-enter the Creel house, this time with the intention of going deeper. Brenner increases the intensity of the Nina trials. Patrick McKinney doesn't know it yet, but his fate is already sealed. At Chrissy's funeral, Patrick suddenly sees a grandfather clock. No one else reacts. Only him, though he tries to hide it as Jason rallies the team. Later that night, he joins Jason and the others as they track Eddie Munson across Lover's Lake. Patrick pushes himself harder than the rest, diving into the cold water without hesitation. He tries to swim back up, but it's too late. Patrick rises out of the lake, lifted by an invisible force. Jason and the others stare in shock, limbs bent unnaturally, his eyes hollowing inward as his bones snap one after another. Patrick becomes Vecna's next victim, and his death sets off the chain of events that pushes Jason from fear into rage, convinced more than ever that Eddie is behind something far darker than murder. Vecna isn't a ghost story anymore. He's already planned what comes next. Episode 6. The Dive. In Hawkins, things escalate. The kids confirm that every murder by Vecna creates a new gate to the Upside Down, and now they have proof. Eddie saw it happen. After Patrick's death, they find another tear in reality, this time at Lover's Lake. Steve, Robin, Nancy, and Eddie take a boat onto the lake to investigate the new gate. Steve strips down and dives in, flashlight in hand. He finds it, another gate, suspended in the water like a wound that never closed. Just as he begins to surface, vines whip out and drag him through. He disappears into the Upside Down. Nancy dives in after him. Then Robin. Then Eddie. The Upside Down is cold, stale, and crawling with monsters. And now they're trapped there. Inside the tank, 11's memories intensify. She sees herself in the Rainbow Room, being guided by the mysterious orderly. He's kind, soft-spoken, the only adult in the lab who treats her like a person. He tells her there's a chip in his neck keeping him from using his powers, and he asks for her help. This is the moment everything changes. Back in Hawkins, Lucas, Max, and Dustin monitor the others dive into the lake and wait for a sign. In the Upside Down, Steve fights for his life. Bats, winged monsters with teeth like razors, descend on him. He swings wildly, bleeding fast. The episode builds to a climax as 11's memories reach the moment of the massacre. Brenner staring at her through the glass. But the truth is more complicated than that, because it wasn't her. Not entirely. Episode 7, The Massacre at Hawkins Lab. In the suffocating shadows of the Upside Down, Steve, Nancy, Robin, and Eddie navigate the dead mirror of Hawkins, bruised and bloodied. They find shelter in Nancy's old bedroom. Dustin, Max, and Lucas realize the group must still be alive. Through a hastily cobbled plan involving lights and walkie-talkies, they communicate across dimensions. Dustin tells them about a possible gate back in Eddie's trailer. Inside the Nina project, 11 is drowning in memory. She remembers it all now. Not just the screaming or the blood, but the betrayal. How the orderly, the only one she trusted, revealed his true nature. He sees himself not as a villain, but as an evolved being. But 11 refuses. She won't become a monster. So he attacks. Blood pours from her ears and eyes. He overpowers her, momentarily. But in her defiance, she taps into something deeper. And with a scream, she obliterates him. She doesn't kill him, though. She tears open a gate. Hurls him into another world. That's the birth of Vecna. Meanwhile, in Russia, Hopper, Joyce, and Murray face their own nightmare. Trapped inside the Soviet prison, they're forced into an arena with a Demogorgon. Hopper, armed with a flaming spear and desperation, fights for his life. He kills it, burns it alive with fire and grit and fury. Back in the Upside Down, Nancy's mind is not her own anymore. As they reach the gate, climbing bed sheets back into the real world, Vecna strikes. He grabs her consciousness and shows her visions. She's frozen in terror, and in that vision, Vecna speaks to her. The episode ends with revelations crashing in in from all sides. Vecna's origin is no longer a mystery. The connection between the lab, and the Upside Down is complete. He didn't just come from that world, he was sent there, made there, by her. And now he's coming back. Episode 8, Papa. The saltwater tank is gone. The Nina chamber has been dismantled, and chaos fills the underground lab. Colonel Sullivan's forces sweep through the hallways, but it's Brenner, Papa, who acts first, dragging 11 out of the chaos and into the desert, desperate to save her not from the army, but from herself, from the world. The helicopter spots them. Soldiers fire. He falls. 11 kneels beside him, and 11 turns her gaze skyward. Her hand rises, and with a scream, she yanks the chopper out of the sky. It crashes in a fiery blaze. Meanwhile, Mike, Will, Jonathan, and Argyle finally reach her. They've driven across the country, and now they find her in the desert. There's no time to celebrate. She knows she has to return. To Hawkins, to Max, to the fight. Speaking of Max, she, Lucas, and Erica are setting the final phase of their plan into motion. She offers herself as bait. They prepare her with music, with memories. Back in the Upside Down, Nancy, Steve, Robin, Dustin, and Eddie move through the twisted version of Hawkins. In Russia, Joyce, Hopper, and Murray find themselves facing something they barely understand. The prison holds more than Demogorgons. There are vats, bodies, shadow particles suspended in liquid, experiments. It's research. They've captured a piece of the Mind Flayer, a living cloud of tendrils and smoke. 11 and the California crew make a plan to reach Hawkins. Mike holds her hand. Will watches silently. There's something he's still not ready to say. Episode 9, The Piggyback. The final episode begins with Max, Lucas, and Erica walking into Hawkins High. Max has made her choice. She will offer herself as bait for Vecna. In the Upside Down, Steve, Nancy, and Robin climb toward Vecna's lair in the Creel house. Everything is rotting. Meanwhile, Dustin and Eddie set up distractions to draw out the demo bats. But the second they plug in the amp, we know, Eddie isn't walking away from this. In Nevada, 11 climbs into a sensory deprivation tank made of salt. Inside Max's mind, Vecna finds her, and then begins the ritual. Her limbs begin to snap. Her eyes begin to bleed. And somewhere in the void, 11 arrives. Too late. She throws Vecna back with a scream. They clash in a dreamscape. Mike's voice breaks through. He's speaking to her from the real world. Robin and Steve are choked by vines. Nancy finds a shotgun. Demobats rip into Eddie and Dustin's shields. And Eddie fights until his last breath. Dustin screams. Eddie dies in his arms. Back in Max's mind, 11 gains the upper hand. But the damage is done. Max is too far gone. The gates open. Hawkins splits open. Nancy, Steve, and Robin blast him with bullets and fire. He falls out of the attic window, but he's not dead, just wounded. 11 tries to bring Max back. 2 days later, Hawkins blames the devastation on an earthquake. And in the last moments, Mike, Will, Hopper, Joyce, 11, staring into the smoke. And Will says it first. He's not gone. Vecna is still alive. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this full recap of Stranger Things Season 4 and want to see more, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel.